I'm going to invite our panel up to join us. Now, folks who are on the panel, just take a peek here. Your name is on a placard. It would be helpful to everyone who's in attendance if you sat in the chair that's got your name card on it. That makes sense, right? All right. And when you're up here, all I can ask is just get right up close to the microphone. There's a certain thing that happens to you when you hear the sound of your own voice. And I call it the father of the bride syndrome, where you suddenly lose your nerve because you can hear the sound of your own voice. I assure you, it's okay. So I'd like to welcome up Jill Finley. Is everyone here? Is Jill Finley here? Jill, please come up and join us. A triple-negative breast cancer survivor, currently in remission. Have you found your seat? Okay, thank you for joining us. Brent Seegmiller. Brent is a survivor of testicular cancer. Sandy Sutherland. Sandy, a survivor of thyroid cancer. Bruce Kizerian, a survivor of both seminoma and sarcoma. Stacee Riekhof, a survivor of breast cancer, battling breast cancer currently. Is that correct, Stacee? Currently battling breast cancer, right? In the fight right now. And then Benjin Facer. Benjin, you're here, right? All right. Now, Benjin and I had a conversation before the program started. So, Benjin, I'm gonna save you for last. All right? Okay, great. He is a survivor of Hodgkin's lymphoma and thyroid cancer. Thank you very much to our panel. Please welcome them. So I don't have much of a format. I don't really have a formula. So what I might do is ask a question and ask if you've got a thought, if you feel strongly about something, to raise your hand, and I'll try to recognize you as we go. But one of the things that Carrie talked about was some of the visceral, the day-to-day real challenges that folks have. It's much more than a post on social media. There's a very real and difficult battle on a day-to-day basis. I'm interested to know if someone has a story about the source of their strength to go through the process as they were going through their treatments and their diagnosis. And I'm happy to call on someone. Stacee, I know you're not shy. Would you care to warm us up?
Great. Yes, I will.
And please get right on top of that microphone.
Okay. Can
Great.
you hear me? In thinking about that question, I think that one of the things that occurs to me is that someone else touched upon this when they were talking up here, in that it is incredibly difficult, I think, to be a cancer patient. But I think it's probably even more difficult to be a supporter of someone that you dearly love going through a struggle this overwhelming. And I think that although for me, watching the people that loved me so much trying to support me through that, it wasn't that they weren't in the limelight as much as that they just couldn't make it okay, that they couldn't take it away, they couldn't change it, they couldn't do anything but love me through it. And I think that is a very difficult thing to do. And so in thinking about what got me through it, it was the whole village of people that kept bringing food, kept bringing joy, as well as the green light to be honest and real with my sadness and my anger and my grief and my overwhelm, because it wasn't always pretty. I think sometimes as women particularly, we're supposed to be grateful and blessed and all those wonderful things that, are pretty. And I wasn't that, especially initially. I was pissed. And I had to get through that in a very honest, real way before I found earnest gratitude, which I am immensely in touch with now. And so I think for me, it was a village of people and a village of opportunities that got me through, and it's still happening. I was diagnosed 2.5 years ago, and those people still unveil themselves regularly in waiting rooms and just daily opportunities.
Go ahead, Benjin.
So when I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was 6, we had just moved to Minneapolis, and so as a 6-year-old, it obviously hurt. It was painful, but the only real support that I needed was a Nintendo. I was pretty good if I had that. For my parents, it was a different story, and especially my mom. I think at the time they had 5 boys under 10, and we just got that diagnosis, and so obviously that was tough. But what really helped her get through it, a lot of little things, not huge major things, but a lot of little things. One instance, she was at the hospital with me and came home and realized that her flower beds looked terrible. And the next day, she looked out, and our neighbor had come over and planted some flowers there. That was huge, and she loved it. Another time, soon after I was diagnosed, one of our neighbors, like I said, we just moved there. We didn't really know anybody. One of our neighbors came and told my mom, okay, I'm going to do all your ironing while your son is going through treatment. And she'd come over every week, twice a week, pick up all our ironing, and did that every week. That was huge. It's a little thing, but it's big. And so a lot of those little things from the community really helped our family get through that process.
Thank you. If I could turn to Sandy, when our speakers talked, they talked about a lot of the different facets of the process, and I know that it was not exhaustive, but there are feelings of pain and anger and need, but also of love and joy, and I'm interested to know if any of those themes particularly resonated with you as we talk about something like strength to get through the process. Would you mind reflecting on that?
Sure. Mine was 26 years ago, and my gynecologist actually found a lump on my thyroid in between my 2 kids, and so at the time I had a 1-year-old, excuse me, and they did a needle aspiration in my thyroid, and it came back negative, but for some reason, the doctor still wanted to take the lump off of my thyroid, and I had always been an overweight kid, and then an overweight mom, and an overweight wife. And anyway, when they went to take off the lump, I had full-blown thyroid cancer, and they took the whole thing out. And so, for me, my diagnosis and everything was a little bit surprising. I went in thinking I was having, outpatient surgery maybe one night, and I woke up and my husband was asleep on the floor. And so, that was a real shock, a real surprise. I had a 1-year-old little boy at the time. And like everybody else, the support of family and friends and all of the things you have to go through, whether it be chemo, whether it be radiation. I can't remember what the question was.
Just wanted you to reflect on some of the themes that our speakers talked about when you think about the support and the strength that you drew from while you were recovering.
Yeah, as far as, those kinds of things, it was just my family, The people within the hospitals, like everyone else here, we, end up on the 3-week plan, the monthly plan, the 3-month plan, the 6-month plan, until we finally get to go year to year. And that's such a relief. In all honesty, to meet a lot of people here tonight and hear the second time around, that's honestly a fear to me that, chances are very high once you have cancer, it'll come again, is what I read and hear, and that's a real fear for me. To get around that or to help me be stronger, I don't know, well, I'm sure all of you looked at the picture out there tonight of Gentry, and she's a very dear friend of mine, and a year ago today is when she was diagnosed with her cancer. And, with not only her, but a couple of other people, I have learned that through service, and helping those people raise money and helping those people with their families, like you mentioned, helping her with her kids, that's what helps get me through. And as long as I'm thinking of helping other people, it ain't about me. So.
Sure.
Thanks.
Jill, I didn't have an opportunity to speak with you before we got up here, so I've not heard much of your story. But I wonder if anything, if you would like to share your story and maybe relate to something that resonated with you so far that we've talked about that's sort of particular to your story.
Okay, sure. Thank you. I was diagnosed a little over a year ago, with triple negative stage 3, grade 3 breast cancer. And, when I first found out, I wasn't surprised. It was like, oh, yeah, I kind of knew that. I know that everybody's experience is very different, and my experience was an experience of peace, and I just knew that was just part of my life, and that it was going to be okay, no matter what the outcome. And I've always felt pretty peaceful about it. I don't know what the eventual outcome will be, but I feel like either way, we can't control the diagnosis we get or the outcome, but we can certainly control how we react to it and what we do with it. And so I've tried to just be as positive as possible. I know that makes a big, huge difference. My oncologist, I just love her to death, and she's a very positive person. And she said to me, if there's a 75% chance that you'll succumb to this disease, then there's a 25% chance that you won't. And if anybody's going to be in that 25%, it ought to be you, is what she says to me. And I just love that. I just love that about her. And so that's what I go on. And I have two sisters who've also had cancer. One of them told me that not a day goes by that she doesn't wake up and think, oh, I have cancer. And she's, I guess I wouldn't say in remission, she's cancer-free now, but she still has that in every day in her mind. And when I heard that, I was so surprised, and I thought, I'm not gonna let that define me. I mean, I'm aware of it, because certainly we have to be aware and be watching for things, but I just want to move on and do the best you can. And as I was listening to some of the other speakers, I was thinking about an experience I had where so many people have come up to me and said, oh, I just don't know how you do it. I don't think I'd be able to do it. And I just have thought, well, yes, you would, because you don't have a choice. I mean, you just keep on moving, and you might as well do it cheerfully and as happily as possible, because while it's miserable and can be really life-changing, it also can be something that brings your family joy. When I was first diagnosed, I knew that it would be a blessing for our family, because I had the feeling that it would just bring our family closer, and that's exactly what it has done. I have a close family anyway, but I've been so blessed to have all of their support, and they've been just really great to each other and to me. And so I think if we just kind of look for all those little tiny blessings that we can find each day, then we can have a more positive outlook.
Thank you, Jill. Brent, I'm curious. I'm interested in your reaction to that. We've heard folks who have different reactions from being angry to hearing Jill talk about feeling blessed. What was your reaction upon finding out that you had testicular cancer?
It's interesting that Jill says that she felt like, oh, this makes sense, because it's really odd. Leading up to my cancer, probably for the last 6 months before that, I have what I can only now reflect on and call premonitions, where there'd be a moment where I actually contracted cancer on my mission, my LDS mission. I was in Arizona, and I came home with my cancer at 22 months. So I'd been there for the majority of the time, but there were just certain moments where I'd be walking down the street and we might talk to somebody that had cancer or knew somebody, and there'd be this thought, what if I got cancer? And there was just this sensation around it that it was fear, but it was also, I wonder if this is going to happen to me. And so I kind of had the same reaction. When they did my initial test, the blood work and an MRI to see if I had testicular cancer, I didn't get a definite yes from the doctor at that point, but I somehow knew in my heart I had cancer. And it's funny, my mom is a nurse, and I talked to her, and she was like, you're going to be fine, you're not going to have cancer. And in the back of my mind I said, no, I think I am. And so it was a really just weird sensation to have that. I didn't feel peaceful at that point, but I guess somewhere I knew. I don't quite understand that. I still don't, but it makes me think.
Do you carry that sea change? There's sort of there's an acceptance that you've got, it sounds like. And how has that carried forward since the treatments that you've had and in your life since then?
Well, I think I've really come to believe what Jill says about our reaction to things. And I think for me, my situation is a little bit different. I don't have really any horror stories to tell when it comes to my treatment. And I fully recognize that I, in a sense, had it lucky. I don't think anybody that gets cancer ever is lucky, but I had surgery. I did 2 rounds of chemotherapy, so I had 6 weeks, and I was done. And I think for most people that are familiar, that's pretty lucky. But I think for me, the perspective I have as a survivor is how it changed me as a person. Not only my perspective on life, but I sometimes just felt like in the months subsequent that I was like a stranger, that I saw the world in a very different way than people who had never had the kind of experience I did. And it was a very lonely experience for me. And I think all survivors can relate to that. It's funny, as I was looking at the different panels and the different pictures, I was really surprised to see that people had a similar reaction to cancer that I did, which is that I don't like that I went through this, but I'm grateful for the experience in some ways. And so I think that's something we all have in common when we go through cancer, is that we all are taught certain things about life that we wouldn't otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Now, Bruce, you've had 2 different kinds of cancer at was it decades apart? Is that correct? Now, talk about change. That you were easily probably a different person after your first diagnosis, but then to grow and mature over the period of almost 20 years to receive another diagnosis. I'm really interested to know what changes you experienced the first time you received a diagnosis, and how that changed you when you received your second diagnosis.
I wrote down answers to all these questions. I thought it was a test.
Oh, that was
no.
I'm going off script here.
No, okay.
He gets an A.
When I first had cancer, it was in 1989, and it was testicular cancer, and all I can remember was that I really didn't feel sick until they started treating me, and I felt, and I also learned that guys, because I was making jokes about it, and guys don't want to joke about testicular cancer. I don't know what the problem is. But
I just have to say, the one fear every man has is testicular cancer. And I get a sick kind of joy out of being able to say, oh yeah, I've had that, and see the look of horror on their face. Sorry.
yeah, it was kind of fun to tease other guys, but the treatment wasn't bad the first time. It was worse, the treatment, the first time. And one thing I noticed I had radiation treatment both times, is that radiation treatment is really much, much easier and better and shorter time, and it's just much, much easier process than it used to be. But the first time, I don't know, I guess I kind of felt like, it kind of slowly dawned on me that I was mortal and I was going to die someday. But when time went on and on, I just forgot about it. And the only time I'd ever remember it was when I was trying to torment one of my coworkers with a joke about testicular cancer. And nobody ever thought it was funny but me. So it is funny. I'm sorry. But anyway, the second time was a little more worrisome, because I'm 68 years old, and when they first diagnosed it, they found, I had 4 surgeries on this arm, and 2 skin grafts, and at first they didn't think it was anything bad, but then finally they took a tissue sample, and it was a sarcoma, and they had already told me that this kind never turns into sarcoma. This kind never spreads. And then they told me that maybe I had it in my lymph nodes and in my lungs, and then I panicked. That's when I started worrying, and my wife worried more than me. She was a great support. It's good to have somebody that does your worrying for you too when you're sick. But sometimes I don't take things as seriously as I should, but they found spots in my lungs, and it turned out that they weren't anything significant. They just didn't do anything, and so they finally decided it wasn't anything serious. They were tiny little things. And so the treatment with the arm, it was like every day I'd get up regular time, I'd go to the clinic and stop by and get a radiation treatment, then I'd go to work. It was completely painless. I felt fine. I feel guilty that I wasn't miserable when I see how much some other people suffered, especially people at the clinic when I went there. But it just wasn't that way for me. But also, I started looking at, I decided, sometime in this process that I just wanted to, there were things I wanted to do. Because I'm 68, I'm not going to live forever. I'm not going to say I'm going to croak next year or anything like that, but I wanted to do things. And so one of the things that happened to me is I got grumpier. I got grumpier, and at work, I got impatient sometimes. I still do it, but I'm learning to control it. But they'd tell me to do something, or they'd give me a job to do, and I'd say, there's certain things I want to do in my life, and that isn't one of them. And I got away with it. So now, where at my work, I mostly get the stuff I want to do, and I go to work and I play all day. I have really good employment, and also, I was married before, and it was a hard experience when I was married before and had cancer, but this time I was married to Kathy, and it was really, really wonderful. She's a sweet person. I love her, and she loves me, and we like each other. So that's hard to do, is like a person for your years and years and years and years. But we like each other.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay, is that enough?
That's plenty.
Okay.
You're doing great. You want my job, I think. So one of the things you said struck a chord. There's things you want to do in your life. And I was really inspired when I spoke with Benjin about that particular topic. He's a student at Brigham Young University. And talk a little bit about the things you want to do in your life.
So for all you Utes fans who want to beat me up in the parking lot after, I understand. But yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to a doctor at the U about a year ago as I was preparing to head to medical school. Just talking to him, he said something really interesting. He said he's a pediatric oncologist. He said that cancer does a lot of things to a lot of people, and I've seen really, really good deaths and really, really bad survivals. I think that's interesting, the effect that cancer can have on us. Sometimes a cancer can bring a family really close together, and even if the person passes away, the effect of family bonding is still there. And sometimes, even if the person survives, it divides the family and creates a lack of faith or whatever it is, and can destroy it. And so, as far as the cancer's effect on our family, on me, totally changed my life. Not that I was really had a great direction at age 6 to start out with, but I had been around an environment where medicine wasn't scary. My doctors were great. I learned that there was more than just needles. There was hope inside that hospital. They were my friends. So ever since then, I've had a desire to kind of give back, to become someone like them. Like I said, I'm a student at BYU. In the cancer awareness group, there's a couple of us here volunteering tonight. I'm headed to medical school next year with plans to go into oncology. I've done a couple different cancer research internships I'm from Nashville, back in Nashville, both in kind of a research setting and a radiation oncology, and in every single kind of circumstance, I guess you could say, I pick up something different, pick up something new. I love being in the clinic. I love being with patients because I can say, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I've been there too. I really think that's going to be valuable for me as a doctor, and just for the rest of my life, we're all going to be interacting with more cancer patients for the rest of our lives. And I'm really grateful, like Jill was saying, it sounds weird, but I'm really grateful for my experience with cancer. And sometimes that takes a while. My fiance, actually, her mother just passed away from colon cancer. And so it's been interesting contrasting my experience with her experience. And mine obviously is ending up well, and hers, she hasn't really gotten to that point of being grateful for that experience. But I am grateful for the chance to interact with lots of different people, get involved with 5K races and things like this to really stay in touch with the cancer community. I think that's really important.
Thank you. So as we all know, we're here because Needs Beyond Medicine helps cancer patients with non-medical costs that are associated with the battle against cancer and for survival. I'm interested, perhaps Stacey, would you mind offering some insights from your experience or your observations on the ways that having cancer and going through treatment impacts someone to a point where Needs Beyond Medicine can help them?
Honestly, I can't speak to that specifically. My cancer treatment, the biggest financial impact that my cancer treatment had was that the specific prognosis and pathway that my doctors wanted to treat my cancer would have been what's called brachytherapy. And it was so expensive that the insurance, did not agree to do it. And although that does not answer your specific aspect of that question, to me, I think it speaks to a very important aspect of how money affects all of our health care, which is to say that insurance is ultimately making a lot of calls in how we are treated over our doctors. I was supposed to go into a surgery at 6 o'clock the next morning, and I got a call at 5:30 p.m. the night before, and my doctor said, you weren't approved for this procedure because your insurance has denied this procedure. And so money speaks to our health care in so many ways. I know other speakers have talked about how, astronomical our insurance is. And, but even those of us that, have scraped together having health care, we don't get to make those decisions, and our doctors don't get to make those decisions. And I think that is criminal, actually. But, I was very lucky in that I was not put in a position where I was unable to pay for things outside of that. So I can't speak to that specifically, and I know there are so many people here that do benefit from that, and so I want them to speak specifically to that. But I feel like the other aspect was worth commenting on.
Of course. Jill?
I didn't have any specific needs that we couldn't take care of ourselves, and I was so blessed that way. But I can see how it could be a burden on so many people. I have a handicapped son, so for me, one of the biggest challenges was getting care for him, because I'm his primary care provider, and I work from home so that I can take care of him. And so I have a wonderful family, and many of them live close by, and they were more than willing to help out. But what if I didn't have nearby family members that could help with that child care? So I think of a lot of folks that are in this situation that maybe wouldn't have child care available to them, or travel expenses, just having to drive to the Huntsman Center from where I am. And right now I'm driving twice a week, but there were times when I was going daily, and during radiation I did it at a nearby center, so it wasn't quite so far, but every day there was an expense related to cancer. And fortunately we were able to handle that, but I think for some people this is a big issue. It's not just the medical expense, it's not just the doctors and the hospitals and procedures. There's other things. What about loss of income on those days that you can't work? Those days that you can't, I'm self-employed, so I was able to pare down my schedule, but there was a lot of loss of income during that year. And just because I didn't put a lot of expectations on myself, so I didn't do as much as and some people don't have that luxury, and they have to have that income. And so there are a lot of needs that can be addressed by this.
Well, I certainly think about folks who are in a situation where in order for them to just have the ability to fight their disease, to get to the hospital, to continue to pay rent, to continue to have meals, for example, or just household expenses. It's health insurance doesn't sort of reimburse you for meals or groceries or fuel or car insurance.
And also just not having to worry about those things.
That's right.
And that's an added worry. And if you don't have that brain power going towards worrying about this little expense you've got of gas in your car or whatever, then you can work on those positive energy that you need to send to your body to get fighting that disease and taking care of it. Yeah. So the worry is a huge thing.
Brent, I'm seeing some nodding. What thoughts do you have?
My brother-in-law had colon cancer, and it was pretty bad for him. And he's married, and they have 5 children. And at some points, almost every other day, she would be on Facebook saying, "Hey, can somebody give me a ride here? Can somebody give me a ride here?" And I can't imagine the financial needs that they had. Because he was the breadwinner, she stayed home, and then once his cancer became so serious, he was let go from his work. And so I think there's a lot of need. Kind of like, I want to say Benjamin, cancer kind of shaped my career path and what I wanted to do, and I've been accepted to an MSW program, so I'm very much interested in the mental health side of things, and I think that something that is overlooked and under-talked about is counseling for people with cancer, because it is such a traumatic experience, not only for obviously the survivors or the patients, but their family, and that oftentimes, like I kind of shared, with my experience, even when your physical scars have healed, there are still emotional scars. There's still the baggage that you have to deal with of adjusting your life, understanding who you are now versus who you are when you go through cancer, when sometimes you don't even recognize your own skin. You don't even know that you're not even in the same body you've had for 20 years or 30 years or however long. And so I think that's a need that unfortunately is overlooked. Like Sandy said, insurance doesn't cover that as much anymore. And so I think that's definitely a need that can be met. And so I personally am very grateful that, for Philip and this organization, because even though I've kind of gone through it, I can see other people that will need it, and I'm grateful that the organization's there to help.
Thank you. So we're down to just a few minutes left in our panel, but I'd like to go down the table here and offer just a couple of sentences. I want to propose a hypothetical situation that is highly likely in all of our lives. A couple sentences on what you would say to someone who's just learned that they have a diagnosis of cancer in their life, or to that person or to a family member. What might be a couple thoughts, just a couple sentences on what you might offer to that individual or a family member of theirs?
Yeah. It's interesting. I literally, on this week, I had a friend who just told me he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And basically what I told him is it's not a fun club to be in. Nobody would choose to be here. But it will change you. And don't let, your old life is kind of your old life. And you kind of have to accept the fact that things are going to be different, and they're not always going to be fun. But you can pull some good things out of that.
Thank you. Stacey? I'm sorry, I apologize to Sandy. I'm sorry, I skipped over you, Sandy.
We can skip me. No. I would let them know that I'm here for them no matter what. And even though I hate the saying, everything happens for a reason, it does happen for a reason. And for me and for most that I know, it has made me stronger and taught me a lot. So that's what I'd say.
Very good. Stacey?
It's what I touched on initially, and it is actually one of my biggest honors of being a survivor, which is a word I struggle with immensely. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I struggle with the word survivor because it feels like a finish line. It feels like I'm tempting the gods and I'm going to get whacked with a stupid stick when I when I say that word, and it's like, so I never say that word, sorry. I always say, I'm doing fine, I'm doing really well right now. People don't say remission anymore. We just don't use that language anymore, really. We don't say, that it's gone. We don't say it's over very often. I think those are words that sound really great to people that don't and haven't had cancer, but I actually don't know very many people that have had cancer that use that language. Yeah. So right now I'm healthy and I'm really grateful for that. And the thing that I do say to a lot of people that I'm very grateful that call me is allow yourself to be honest and real, because you will move through this much quicker and much easier if you allow yourself the truth, which is possibly anger, which is possibly shock, which is possibly grief, which is occasionally unmitigated joy and beauty at the least expected things that are just, the crocus through the snow. But whatever it is, and as ugly and beautiful as it is, just be real.
Thank you. Brent?
I'm going to tweak your question a little bit to me.
Sure.
Because one of the things I've often thought about is what I wish I'd known before I had cancer. What I've, not only kind of what I've learned, but what I wish kind of maybe would have prepared me a little bit. And so it's kind of a checklist, and I apologize. But the first thing is that it's okay to feel, like you said, it's okay to be real, and it's okay to be scared. It's okay to ugly cry. It's okay to have bad days. I think that sometimes, and I think we all experience this when we go through something that other people maybe don't, that they say, oh, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. And sometimes I just wanted to say, I'm not okay. And maybe eventually, but I'm not going to be okay tomorrow, and I'm not going to be okay for the next week that I'm in the hospital puking my guts out. Sorry. And so I think it's very important to say to somebody, I'm really sorry that you're going through that, and I hope that you know I'm going to be there to support you. The other three things that have really helped me sense, and I wish I had known, the first is nutrition and the importance of eating healthy, eating fruits and vegetables. From a lot of survivors that I've talked to, that can make your treatment experience a night and day difference. And I wish I had known about that before, because I would have made a lot of different choices when I went through treatment based on that. And the other thing is meditation. Not really a specific kind, just as easy. There's a TED Talk by a guy named Andy Padicombe where he talks about doing nothing for 10 minutes a day. I'd encourage everybody to look at it. Meditation has changed my life, along with nutrition, and I wish I could have known about how powerful it is when I was going through treatment. And the last thing is, I apologize for putting a plug for another organization besides Need Beyond Medicine, who I also would put a plug for, but there's an organization called Immerman Angels that I have had the chance to volunteer with. What they do is they offer peer mentorship. So they try and match you as perfectly as possible with somebody in your exact same situation with cancer, down to your age, down to your interests, down to what type of cancer you have. I've had the chance to be a mentor to other people. Some people who had testicular cancer and had no family, no kind of support at all. I was the only person there. And even though we never met in person, most of the time we text or we called each other, it's nice that I can give back, and it's free, so there's no cost to it. And I really wish I had that support, had somebody I could talk to as well.
Thank you, Brent. Jill?
I'd just like to say that I think I spend way more than 10 minutes a day doing nothing.
Jealous.
Not planned, but that just happens. When you framed the question, what would you tell someone who was just diagnosed with cancer, I looked at that question before and I thought, oh, my immediate reaction to that is, I don't think I could tell you anything, because everybody's journey is so completely different, and I wouldn't want to put my frame on it for somebody else. Somebody else might have completely different emotions than I would, and I wouldn't want to have to give them advice, because their journey is going to be so different than mine and so individual. But just to actually hang on to whatever faith you can, whatever faith that you have, and family, and those who can support you. It's so important to have some support. Like you said, if you don't have someone that is near you that can talk to you, I have a lot of Facebook friends, a lot that I don't know that are friends professionally, and I see them going through some of the same things I've been through, and the struggles that they are having, and they don't have the family support and the friend support that I've had, and I almost feel so guilty, and so I feel so bad for them because they don't have that, and it's huge. So whatever support you can give to someone who's going through that, and for someone who's newly diagnosed, I would encourage them to reach out to somebody so that they have someone to talk to, even if it's a brand new friend. And they will meet those people in the cancer centers, in the infusion area, wherever you are getting treatment, you'll meet a whole bunch of people that are in your same boat. And I would encourage them to talk.
Bruce, I'm going to give you the last word. Oh,
and I know you're prepared.
I am. Scripted. I've got answers to all the questions. Now, I really feel like it wasn't that hard for me either time when I had cancer. It was a more difficult experience the first time, but I don't know if I have advice to give people who had a much more difficult time and a much more serious cancer. But I know that eating, just making sure you eat well when you're recovering and during the treatments, that's really important. The first time I had cancer, I had these weird cravings for pickles, cheddar cheese, and fried chicken. So I ate pickles, cheddar cheese, and fried chicken every day, and I never lost an ounce. So, and then the second time I had cancer, the thing that really helped me was beer. I'm sorry. And anyway, And I would like to be able to turn my mind off for 10 minutes in a day, but my mind will never stop. And so I just think of things to do all the time to keep busy. If I'm not feeling particularly well or something, I go find something that's fun to do. Since I work at a fun place, I have fun things I can do at work and at home. And keep yourself busy as you can. As you know, you sometimes don't feel like it, but do something.
I'd like to thank our panel for sharing their experiences and letting me drive the conversation a little bit. I really appreciate it. Please thank our panelists for coming up, and you're now excused. Thank you very much. It's Jill Finley, Brent Seegmiller, Sandy Sutherland, Bruce Kizerian, Stacee Riekhof, and Benjin Facer.